we're pleased to have Don Bubar, who's the CEO of Avalon Advanced Material. So this is a change of pace from our first two speakers. Don is building a company that is building the supply chain for the materials that are needed for the clean economy. He's a Canadian. They're a mining company with projects under development in lithium and rare earth minerals. Don has used his knowledge of geology, he's a geologist, to locate and secure some of the very interesting mineral deposits, by the way, including recycling mine tailings, which can be exploited profitably. So figuratively, he's sitting on a gold mine. So if you like what you hear, this is a publicly traded company. He'll tell us where it's traded, and you can go and find out more about his company. Don, take it away.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Tom. Yes, we are a public company. We trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol AVL, and we're also an SEC registrant and trade on the OTCQB under the symbol AVL and F. So I'm delighted to be here today to talk about this whole issue of critical mineral supply chains. It's been in the news a lot lately, and the fact that there is no security of supply of most of these critical minerals that are not only needed in defense technology, but are also needed in clean technology, such as the wind turbines that our previous speaker talked about, is becoming an important issue. And I think it hasn't really been very well appreciated just how many of these are needed in many of these new clean technologies now. Most people are now aware of lithium because of its being in the name of the lithium-ion rechargeable battery. And you're hearing more about rare earths, but there's a lot more of these non-traditional mineral commodities that are now vital to new clean technologies. And it's been a case of basically raising awareness about this in the investment community and the ESG investment community in particular. And one group that's done a very good job on this over the last few years has been the World Bank with their Minerals for Climate Action, Climate Smart Mining Facility that was held 2 years ago, where they did a great job on raising awareness on just how important these are to creating these new technologies and building out the whole supply chains that will be needed for wind turbines, solar, electric vehicles, and energy storage. And it's also been pointed out that these can be produced in much more environmentally sustainable ways than a lot of commodities were produced historically. They don't necessarily need to be produced in very large scale operations. Many of them are niche markets that can be developed at a small scale with relatively small impacts. And also, as was alluded to by Tom in the introduction, there are more and more situations now where we can actually look at historic mine waste as opportunities to recover some of these critical minerals. And that's because a lot of mining operations that were developed in the past 50 or 100 years ago were developed to mine one traditional commodity like copper or coal, but those resources may have contained other elements that had no demand or value at the time, and so they just went into the waste. And so now many of those historic mine wastes can be looked at as opportunities to recover some of these critical minerals, do it in a sustainable way, extract value from the waste, and end up fully remediating the perpetual environmental liability that exists at many of these sites. One example I've been looking at that's particularly relevant in the United States, especially in the East, is historic coal mine waste. There are thousands of sites like this that have ongoing environmental issues associated with acid mine drainage. But what they're discovering is that many coal resources contain rare earths, not huge concentrations compared to a primary mineral deposit, but significant enough that they can be looked at as opportunities to recover rare earths. They occur in acid mine drainage at a number of these sites that requires ongoing treatment before it's discharged from the site. And what I point out to people is that once the rare earths are in solution, then Mother Nature's already done a lot of the extraction work for you, because getting them into solution is the hard part usually. And now there are a lot of initiatives now to innovate new extraction technologies to recover these rare earth elements and other critical minerals from waste and acid mine drainage in very low impact, low cost ways. And that's a huge opportunity, I think, for innovators in the scientific community in the United States and elsewhere in North America. We've actually been working with a group in Florida called Precision Periodic that have been doing exactly that. And they have innovated a process they call the nano beads. That is a filtration process that uses nanotechnology where you can pour an acidic solution into these cylinders and it will filter out the elements of interest, creates no waste, and is a very low impact way to recover these elements of interest. They've already demonstrated it can be done with rare earths, and we want to work with them now to find a site where we can actually implement it at a little bit larger scale to prove its utility. And I think the opportunity is that while any one site may not be kind of the mother lode of rare earths, collectively in the United States, it could be the new future source of a domestic supply of rare earth elements to serve all the needs in the United States, including the wind turbine industry going forward. So an important opportunity to look more closely at, and it will allow the coal industry, obviously that's in decline now, to transition into a new sector of the economy and continue to create jobs and opportunities for people in those communities that have relied on that industry historically. So that's one example, and then there's a lot of other metallic mineral deposits that contain other elements, and there are new technologies now being innovated to where you can go back to those piles of rock that are rusting away, creating acid mine drainage, crush them, and recover elements of interest using technologies such as sensor-based ore sorting, which is a dry processing technology. It uses no water, uses no chemical reagents, uses lasers that can detect the minerals of interest, push those out, and put the rest into a pile that can go back in the hole in the ground where they came from originally. So it's another example, one of the opportunities out there. So we're now trying to get a number of these businesses started in different parts of Canada and the United States. So I'm really delighted to see how Canada and the US are looking at how we can collaborate on creating these critical mineral supply chains and do it in sustainable ways. One of the challenges we've had, though, is there's still some reluctance to go back to closed mine sites. They're often now on public lands where government is in charge, and government sees it more as a risk than an opportunity to go back to these sites and try to innovate some new process. And that's also true of some of the major mining companies that have inherited responsibility for these sites are also inclined to be risk averse in terms of doing something innovative there. But I think that's starting to come around too, and I know in the government in Canada is starting to look at opportunities now to go back to these sites that have been treated as perpetual liabilities and see what can be done to clean them up and extract value from the waste. So huge opportunity. Avalon is trying to lead the way on that, and we hope that we'll be able to find more investor interest to help us achieve our goals down the road here. Thank you very much for your attention today.
Great, Don. I guess you were referring to the "you touch it, you own it" rule regulation. Why people are afraid to go in, even though it's commonly known there's plenty of valuable stuff there, but unless you're willing to clean up the whole site, regulator, it may not you may not get the chance to go in and just pull out the rare earths without addressing the whole remediation. So there a couple of questions have come in from the audience. One is, do you feel your method of extraction is cost competitive with the established forms of recovery for rare earths?
Yes, we certainly think it can be. It needs to be proven yet, but we think it can be, because historically, that's why the rare earth supply chain has never really been established much outside of China, is that it's a very expensive process to mine and then treat a mined ore to recover the rare earths efficiently. We know because we tried to do it 10 years ago. We almost got there, but it was basically $1.5 billion investment to be able to establish that full processing infrastructure needed to do it. So that's been an inhibiting factor for getting it started. And the technology that I described is one of several that are being looked at right now as alternatives that are much more efficient and lower cost to be able to implement.
So
So
what
we see a lot of potential there.
About the transition for the company? One audience member noted you're pre-revenue or you have no revenue now. Will that be changing in the near future?
Yeah, we sure hope so. One of the reasons we like this sector is that you don't necessarily have to try to build a large scale operation to initiate production. You can often start at a small scale, and it's often the better way to do it, because often the product you're trying to make has demanding specifications, and before you can find buyers for it, you have to prove that the product will meet their requirements. And that's particularly true for the lithium battery materials. It's not just any lithium, it has to meet the precise specifications needed by those downstream manufacturers. And that's not necessarily that easy to do. So you got to make sure you can do it right before you scale it up. So we think we'd achieve revenue in the near term going with a small scale approach.
Great. Well, that gives you more control. There's a question about ocean mining and whether that's a viable alternative for rare earths. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, it's been promoted as a possibility by Japanese interests on the ocean floor of the Pacific Ocean. Frankly, I'm a bit skeptical on that being a real viable economic opportunity, but it is another example of some of the creative thinking that's going into alternative ways to recover rare earths. Rare earths are not rare, in fact. It's a very misnamed commodity. They occur very broadly through the Earth's crust. They're just rarely concentrated in such a way that makes them easy to extract and then use in the forms that are needed in new technology.
So what I've heard is that Avalon is has a resource that it can deploy. Maybe you want to touch on what you currently own, but also you're looking for technology to do smaller projects that can get you to revenue much faster than building out a mine resource.
We're focused on a lithium resource right now that, believe it or not, we've had for over 20 years, trying to find the right market opportunity. Maybe it was a bit early 20 years ago, seeing the future for critical minerals like lithium, but certainly its time has come, and we want to take that exact approach there of starting at a modest scale, beginning to serve markets where we can sell lithium into new applications in glass ceramics, as well as looking at how we can participate in the growth of the supply chain for lithium-ion battery technology. So that's probably the project that we have that's closest to getting off the ground in production with revenue.
Well, Elon Musk raised investor awareness of this hugely last week. I can't believe the number of people whose knowledge of batteries are that one end has a plus and the other has a minus, who listened to Tesla's Battery Day, where even for an auto company executive to be getting into the upstream mining resources. Now, I think he was talking Northwest Nevada, but a lot of people went running looking at the maps to see who had mines in Northwest Nevada and what companies are going to be there. So it sounds like your 20-year wait is almost over, that the demand for lithium is going to grow very rapidly, whether it's a lithium ion or a lithium metal battery, and that companies will be able to deploy if they can meet the quality requirements for whether it's lithium or your other businesses in rare earth reclamation.
You're right.
Right.
And you have to be adaptable too, because the technology is continuing to evolve, and the forms of lithium that are used in today's batteries may not be the same as tomorrow's batteries.
Don, thank you very much. And we hope to see you again in the future and get an update.
Thank you.